All right. Recording this because this
You
couple
don't
right here just
belong
accused me
here,
of stealing
and
my
you
own
can't.
car.
That's not your car. People like you are always stealing cars from us.
Look straight into the camera because this is why I record all this just because I'm black.
The smartphone camera was already recording when the shouting began, which should have been a quick, forgettable moment. A man walking back to his car after grabbing lunch instead became a digital wildfire that would dominate headlines for days. The Maple Ridge Plaza parking lot, normally quiet and uneventful, was about to become the center of a story viewed more than 52 million times in a single weekend. A story that exposed just how quickly a lie can spiral when fueled by racism, and how expensive that spiral can become. Before we continue, let me know where you're watching from. And if this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light.
It was 1:47 p.m. on a Saturday in late September. Marcus Jenkins had driven there for one simple reason: pick up takeout from the Thai restaurant and get back home to finish a work project he'd been putting off all week. He'd parked his black Honda Accord in a standard spot near the restaurant entrance, walked inside, waited 10 minutes for his order, paid, and walked back out carrying a plastic bag with 2 containers of pad thai and spring rolls. Marcus had lived in the area for 11 months, ever since accepting a remote cybersecurity position with a firm based in Atlanta. He'd bought a modest house 3 miles from the plaza, kept to himself mostly, worked from his home office, and occasionally ventured out for groceries or takeout. He didn't know many people in the neighborhood yet, didn't attend community events, just lived his life quietly, which is all he'd ever wanted to do. As he approached his car, he noticed something odd. A white Ford Explorer was parked in the spot next to his, significantly closer to the driver's side of his Accord than seemed necessary. Close enough that squeezing between the vehicles to reach his door would be uncomfortable. The Explorer was empty, but standing beside it were 2 people, a white couple, both appearing to be in their early 50s. The man wore jeans, a flannel shirt, and a camouflage hunting cap. His posture was aggressive even while standing still, arms crossed, jaw set, eyes tracking Marcus as he approached. The woman wore dark jeans, a cardigan, bright red lipstick, and an expression that could only be described as hostile. Marcus walked toward his car, assuming they'd move aside so he could get in. Instead, the woman stepped directly in front of his driver's side door. "Excuse me?" Marcus said politely, his takeout bag in one hand, his car keys in the other. "I need to get in my car." The woman didn't move. "What are you doing around here?" Marcus blinked, confusion replacing politeness. "I'm getting into my car. Can you please move?" The man stepped closer, positioning himself beside the woman, forming a human barrier between Marcus and his vehicle. "This your car?" "Yes, it's my car. Now can you please move so I can leave?" The woman's eyes narrowed. "You don't belong in this neighborhood." The words hung in the air, their meaning unmistakable. Marcus felt the familiar tightening in his chest, the mixture of anger and exhaustion that comes from being black in America and facing this exact scenario more times than he could count. But he also knew how these situations could escalate if he showed any emotion, any frustration, any hint of the anger he had every right to feel. He pulled out his phone and started recording. "I'm recording this. I don't know what your problem is, but I'm going to get in my car now." The moment the camera appeared, their aggression doubled. The man stepped even closer, his face now inches from Marcus's phone. "You threatened us? You're recording us without permission? This is a public parking lot. I can record anything I want. Now move." The woman's voice rose to a near shout. "He's threatening us! Someone call the police!" Marcus shook his head, keeping his phone steady, keeping his voice calm. "Ma'am, I haven't threatened anyone. I'm trying to get into my own car. You're blocking me." But they weren't listening. The man was puffing up his chest, getting louder, performing for an invisible audience. "We know what you're doing. Criminals like you, lurking around cars, scoping out what to steal. This is literally my car. I parked here 30 minutes ago. I went to get food. Now I'm leaving. That's all that's happening here." Have you ever been confronted for absolutely no reason? What happened? The woman pulled out her phone, her fingers moving quickly across the screen. "I'm calling 911. You need to stay right here until police arrive." Marcus's stomach dropped. He knew how these calls went. He'd seen the videos. Amy Cooper in Central Park, Barbecue Becky, Permit Patty, white people calling police on black people for existing, then playing victim when officers arrived. And he knew how badly these encounters could end when police showed up expecting a dangerous criminal and found a black man instead. "Ma'am, please don't call the police. There's no emergency here. I'm just trying to get in my car." But she was already speaking, her voice suddenly trembling, fragile, nothing like the aggressive tone she'd used moments earlier. "Yes, 911? I'm at Maple Ridge Plaza, and there's a large black man here who's threatening me and my husband. He's trying to force his way into a car that doesn't belong to him. He's being very aggressive. We're scared. Please send someone quickly." Every word was a lie. Marcus was 5'10", average build, not particularly large. He hadn't threatened anyone. He wasn't forcing his way into anything. He was trying to access his own vehicle. But the 911 operator was hearing a frightened woman reporting a dangerous situation, and that narrative would reach the responding officers before they arrived. The husband leaned toward Marcus's phone camera, his voice dripping with false authority. "You're going to jail, buddy. You picked the wrong people to mess with. This is a good neighborhood. We don't tolerate criminals here." Marcus kept recording, documenting everything, knowing that this video might be the only thing standing between him and false charges. "I'm a cybersecurity analyst. I live 3 miles from here. I come to this plaza twice a week. This is my car. You are blocking me from entering my own vehicle. That's what's happening here." The woman was still on the phone with 911, embellishing her story with each sentence. "He's getting more aggressive. He's yelling at us. My husband is trying to protect me. We saw him looking in car windows earlier. Please hurry." Marcus felt panic rising, but forced himself to stay calm. Other shoppers were starting to notice the commotion. A woman loading groceries into her car 2 rows away had stopped, watching. A teenage girl walking past had pulled out her phone and appeared to be recording from a distance. Marcus made mental note of every potential witness. "Sir," Marcus said to the man, keeping his voice steady for the recording, "I'm going to unlock my car now to prove it's mine. I'm reaching into my pocket for my key fob. I'm moving slowly. I'm not threatening anyone." He pulled out his keys, the Honda key fob clearly visible, his movements deliberate and non-threatening. He pressed the unlock button. The Accord's lights flashed. The horn chirped. The locks clicked. The couple didn't acknowledge it. They were too committed to their narrative now, too invested in the lie. The man moved to block Marcus's path more aggressively. "That doesn't prove anything. You could have stolen those keys." Marcus's phone was still recording, capturing everything: the lies, the aggression, the refusal to accept evidence. "I just unlocked the car. It's registered to me. The insurance is in my name. My work laptop is in the back seat. What else do you need?" The woman finished her 911 call and immediately started recording on her own phone, creating her own counter-narrative. "I'm documenting this for evidence. When police arrest you, this will show exactly what happened." Marcus noticed the teenage girl approaching slowly, her phone still recording. She made eye contact with him and nodded slightly, a silent acknowledgement that she was witnessing this, that she was documenting it too. That small gesture gave him a thread of hope. Why do you think people like this feel so confident lying to police? 7 minutes after the 911 call, 2 Mecklenburg County Sheriff's deputies pulled into the parking lot, lights flashing. The couple immediately rushed toward them, talking over each other, gesturing frantically at Marcus, performing their roles as terrified victims. Deputy Michael Daniels, a 12-year veteran, stepped out of his patrol car and immediately assessed the situation with practiced eyes. A black man standing calmly holding a phone and takeout bag. A white couple in aggressive postures, both talking loudly. Other shoppers watching from a distance. His instincts told him something wasn't adding up. "Ma'am, sir, I need you to step back and let me handle this," Daniel said to the couple, his tone professional but firm. They reluctantly backed up, still talking, still trying to control the narrative. Daniels approached Marcus, his hand resting on his belt but not on his weapon, his posture non-threatening. "Sir, can you tell me what's happening here?" Marcus kept his phone recording, but angled it to capture the deputy. "Deputy, my name is Marcus Jenkins. That's my car right there, the black Honda. I parked here about 45 minutes ago, went into the Thai restaurant to get takeout, came back to find that couple blocking my car door. When I asked them to move, they started accusing me of being a criminal, claiming I was trying to break into a car. The woman called 911 and told them I was threatening them, which is completely false. I've been recording the entire encounter." Daniels nodded, taking in the information. "Do you have identification?" "Yes, sir. It's in my wallet. I'm going to reach into my back pocket slowly." "Go ahead." Marcus handed over his driver's license. Daniels examined it, then walked over to the Honda and verified the license plate against his mobile computer. The registration matched. Marcus Jenkins, the address 3 miles away, no warrants, no criminal history, vehicle current on registration and insurance. Daniels returned to Marcus. "Sir, can I see that video you recorded?" "Absolutely." Marcus airdropped the file to Daniels' phone. Daniels walked back to the couple, his posture entirely different now, no longer neutral, but clearly skeptical of their story. "I need to see ID from both of you." The man bristled. "Why? We're the victims here." "ID now." Reluctantly, they handed over their licenses. David and Patricia Morrison, address in a gated community 10 miles away. Daniels ran their information. No warrants, but Patricia had a prior complaint for harassment at a retail store that had been dismissed. "Walk me through exactly what happened," Daniels said, his tone suggesting he already knew they were lying. David Morrison launched into his story. "We were loading groceries when we saw this guy," he pointed at Marcus, "lurking around cars, looking in windows. When we confronted him about it, he got aggressive, started yelling, threatened us. My wife felt unsafe, so she called for help." "And you saw him looking in car windows?" "Multiple cars. He was clearly casing them." Daniels pulled out his phone and played Marcus's video. "That's interesting because this video shows him walking directly from the restaurant to his car, which you were blocking. It shows you accusing him of being a criminal. It shows him unlocking his car to prove ownership. And it shows your wife on the phone with 911 claiming he was threatening you, which this video clearly contradicts." The couple's faces went pale. Patricia stammered, He edited that. That's not what happened." "Ma'am, there are timestamps on this video. It's continuous footage. Nothing's edited." At that moment, the teenage girl approached. "Excuse me, officer, I recorded the whole thing too, from when he came out of the restaurant. He went straight to his car, that couple was waiting there and started harassing him immediately." Daniels took her information and had her send him the video as well. This footage showed a wider angle, capturing Marcus exiting the restaurant, walking directly to his car, the couple already positioned near his door as if they'd been waiting. It corroborated everything in Marcus's recording. What should happen when someone files a false police report?
Deputy Daniels stood in the parking lot reviewing footage from 3 different angles: Marcus's phone, the teenager's phone, and now security camera footage that the plaza manager had provided after hearing about the incident. Every piece of evidence told the same story. Marcus had done nothing wrong, and the Morrisons had fabricated their entire narrative. Daniels walked back to Marcus. "Sir, one more thing. Can you unlock your car for me?" Marcus pressed the key fob. The Accord's lights flashed. The horn chirped. The locks clicked open with an audible sound that carried across the parking lot. Daniels opened the driver's door and looked inside. Everything was consistent with someone who used the car regularly. A gym bag in the back, a laptop case on the passenger seat, registration and insurance documents in the glove box, all with Marcus's name. Daniels closed the door and walked back to the Morrisons. His partner, Deputy Chen, had arrived as backup and stood nearby. Daniels' voice was firm and official now. "Based on the evidence I've reviewed, including multiple video recordings and witness statements, I have determined that you both filed a false police report. You claimed Mr. Jenkins was threatening you, attempting to break into a vehicle and exhibiting aggressive behavior. None of those claims are supported by the evidence. In fact, the evidence shows you blocking his access to his own vehicle and harassing him. Patricia's face crumbled. No, this is a misunderstanding. You're both being detained for filing a false police report. David's demeanor shifted from aggressive confidence to desperate denial. This is ridiculous. We're the victims here. Turn around and put your hands behind your back. The transformation was instantaneous. Patricia began crying, makeup running down her face. David's bluster evaporated, replaced by panic bargaining. Officer, please, we made a mistake. We didn't mean... But Daniels was already securing handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Marcus watched from beside his car, phone still recording, as the couple who'd called police on him were arrested instead. The irony wasn't lost on anyone present. Several shoppers had gathered, most with their phones out, documenting the arrest. The teenage girl gave Marcus a thumbs up. An elderly black woman called out, "That's what they get." As deputies guided the Morrisons toward patrol cars, Patricia was sobbing uncontrollably. "This will ruin us! Please, this will ruin everything!" Deputy Daniels paused and looked back at Marcus. "Sir, I apologize that you had to experience this. You handled it exactly right. Stayed calm, documented everything. Didn't escalate. I'll need you to come to the station to give a formal statement, but you're free to leave now if you prefer to come by later." Marcus nodded, still processing what had just happened. "I'll come by in an hour. I need a minute." "Take your time. And thank you for recording. That video likely prevented this from going very differently."
By Sunday morning, less than 18 hours after the parking lot incident, the Morrisons' lives had begun their catastrophic unraveling. The videos had spread across social media with terrifying speed. Marcus's recording, the teenagers' footage, a compilation someone had created syncing both angles with timestamps. By midnight Saturday, the combined videos had been viewed over 15 million times. By Sunday morning, that number had passed 30 million. The comment section was brutal and unanimous. Imagine calling the police on someone for trying to get in their own car. The entitlement is unbelievable. That man could have been killed because of their lies. They deserve everything that's coming. Local Facebook groups identified the Morrisons within hours. Their names, their address in the gated community, their employers, their social media profiles. Everything became public. Amateur internet detectives began digging through their social media history, finding and screenshotting questionable posts and comments that revealed a pattern of racial resentment. David Morrison worked as an insurance agent for a regional firm. By Sunday afternoon, his employer had released a statement. "We have become aware of an incident involving one of our agents that does not reflect the values of our organization. Effective immediately, David Morrison is no longer employed by our company." Patricia Morrison was a school administrator, an assistant principal at a middle school in a neighboring district. The school board held an emergency meeting Sunday evening. Parents were calling, demanding her removal. Teachers were threatening to protest. By Monday morning, she was placed on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. By Tuesday, after the board reviewed the videos, she was terminated. Their homeowners association issued a notice that they were investigating whether the Morrisons' conduct violated community standards. Neighbors began circulating petitions demanding they leave the neighborhood. Someone spray-painted "racists" on their garage door. While the vandalism was reported to police, no one seemed particularly sympathetic. The Mecklenburg County District Attorney's Office reviewed the case and filed formal charges on Monday, filing a false police report, Class 1 misdemeanor, harassment, Class 2 misdemeanor, disorderly conduct, Class 2 misdemeanor, hate crime enhancement under North Carolina's ethnic intimidation statute. The DA held a press conference. The evidence in this case is overwhelming and disturbing. The defendants deliberately filed a false police report, knowing their claims were untrue, with the apparent intent of causing harm to an innocent person based on his race. This office takes such conduct seriously and will prosecute to the fullest extent of the law. The Morrisons retained an attorney, who immediately began damage control. "My clients deeply regret this incident. It was a misunderstanding that spiraled out of control." The internet wasn't buying it. The videos showed clear intent.
The 911 call recording, which had been released through a public records request, contradicted any claim of misunderstanding. Patricia's voice on that call had been calculated, deliberate, designed to portray Marcus as dangerous. Do you think losing their jobs was justified?
The legal proceedings moved slowly, as justice systems tend to do. The Morrisons pleaded not guilty at their arraignment, released on their own recognizance, with orders to have no contact with Marcus Jenkins. Their attorney filed motions to exclude the video evidence, arguing it was recorded without Patricia's consent during the 911 call. The motion failed. North Carolina is a one-party consent state for recording. Marcus was party to the conversation. The recording was legal and admissible. Their attorney tried arguing that the videos were misleading, that they didn't show the full context. But there were 3 separate angles, all showing the same story. The plaza's security cameras provided additional footage. There was no context that could justify their actions. As the trial date approached, the prosecutor's case only grew stronger. Marcus's testimony would be compelling. The videos were damning. The 911 recording proved false statements. Deputy Daniels would testify about what he observed. The teenage witness would corroborate everything. The Morrisons had no viable defense. 5 months after the incident, their attorney negotiated a plea agreement. Plead guilty to filing a false police report and harassment. Hate crime enhancement dropped in exchange for guilty plea. No jail time. Both defendants had no prior criminal record. Sentencing: 2 years supervised probation, 250 hours community service each, $8,000 fine each. Mandatory participation in racial bias education program, no contact with Marcus Jenkins for 5 years, required to speak at 3 community forums about false reporting and its consequences, letter of apology to Marcus to be read publicly. Patricia wanted to accept immediately, desperate to avoid trial and the possibility of jail time. David resisted, still clinging to pride and denial. But their attorney made the reality clear. If they went to trial and were convicted, the hate crime enhancement would remain. The sentences would be harsher, and they would likely face jail time. The plea was the best outcome they could hope for. They accepted. The sentencing hearing took place in a courtroom packed with observers, media, and community members who'd followed the case. The judge read the terms of the plea agreement, then addressed the Morrisons directly. Your actions that day could have resulted in tragedy. You weaponized the police against an innocent man because of his race. You lied to law enforcement, wasting resources and creating danger. You showed no remorse until facing consequences. The only reason you're not facing jail time is because Mr. Jenkins requested leniency, stating that he believes rehabilitation is more important than punishment. You should be grateful for his mercy, because frankly, I would have preferred to see you spend time behind bars.
Marcus tried returning to normal life after the incident, but normal had fundamentally changed. The video had been viewed over 52 million times. His face was recognizable. People approached him in public, some to offer support, some to apologize on behalf of white people, some just to say they'd seen the video. He was invited to speak at conferences about racial profiling and bias. Civil rights organizations reached out, asking him to share his story. News programs requested interviews. At first, he declined most invitations, uncomfortable with the attention, just wanting to move past the trauma. But gradually, he realized his experience could serve a purpose beyond his personal story. He began accepting speaking engagements, focusing not on revenge or anger, but on education and systemic change. "What happened to me happens every day," he would tell audiences. "The only difference is most incidents aren't recorded. Most don't go viral. Most people don't have video evidence to protect them. I was lucky." That's a terrible thing to say, but it's true. I was lucky that I started recording, lucky that a teenager recorded from another angle,
Lucky that the deputy who responded was professional and reviewed the evidence. But black people shouldn't need luck to be treated fairly. Marcus filed a civil lawsuit against the Morrisons seeking damages for emotional distress, defamation, and violation of his civil rights. The case settled confidentially 8 months later. While the terms were sealed, court observers estimated the settlement in the low six figures. Marcus donated a significant portion to organizations supporting victims of racial profiling and false accusations. The teenage girl who'd recorded the second angle, a 16-year-old named Jasmine Chin, used her viral moment to launch a social media campaign called #RecordTheInjustice, encouraging bystanders to document instances of discrimination and harassment. Her campaign gained traction, with civil rights organizations partnering to provide guidance on how to safely record and report incidents. Deputy Michael Daniels and his partner were formally commended by the sheriff's office for their handling of the situation. Daniels used his experience to develop a training module for other officers on responding to potential false report situations and recognizing when complainants might be lying. The Maple Ridge Plaza management updated their security protocols, installed additional cameras, and required staff to complete bias awareness training. They also posted signs throughout the property stating that discriminatory harassment would not be tolerated and could result in prosecution. Would you have shared the video online if this happened to you? 3 years after the parking lot confrontation, Marcus reflected on the experience during an interview for a documentary about racial profiling in everyday spaces. "The saddest part isn't what they did to me," he said, his voice measured and thoughtful. "It's knowing it happens every day to people who don't have cameras. How many people have been arrested, charged, even convicted because someone lied and there was no evidence to contradict that lie? How many people are sitting in jail right now because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time and someone decided they looked suspicious?" The video became a teaching tool used in multiple contexts. High school social studies classes used it to discuss implicit bias and the consequences of false accusations. College criminal justice programs analyzed it in courses about police response and evidence evaluation. Police academies incorporated it into training on de-escalation and false report recognition. State legislatures in North Carolina cited the case when introducing a bill that would increase penalties for false police reports with racial motivation, reclassifying them as felonies rather than misdemeanors. The bill gained bipartisan support, passed, becoming informally known as Marcus's Law.
The Morrisons completed their probation requirements, performed their community service, and participated in the required bias education program. They fulfilled the terms of their plea agreement, including public apologies read at 3 community forums, though the apologies were widely viewed as perfunctory and insincere. Their attempts to rebuild their lives proved difficult. David struggled to find employment in insurance, as background checks revealed his criminal record. He eventually found work in retail management at significantly reduced income. Patricia was unable to return to education, her career effectively over. She found work in administrative support outside the school system. They moved from their gated community, unable to withstand the social pressure and ostracism from neighbors. Their marriage struggled under the stress, though it survived. Friends distanced themselves, family relationships fractured. The consequences extended far beyond the legal penalties. But the story ultimately isn't about them. It's about accountability. It's about truth prevailing when evidence exists to contradict lies. It's about a system slowly, painfully moving toward justice, one case at a time. It's about Marcus Jenkins, who wanted nothing more than to pick up lunch and go home, who found himself trapped in a nightmare of false accusations and who emerged as an advocate for countless others who've experienced similar injustices but lacked the evidence to prove their innocence. It's about Jasmine Chen, a teenager who saw injustice unfolding and made the split-second decision to record, providing the corroborating evidence that made accountability possible. It's about Deputy Daniels, who did his job correctly, reviewing evidence
asking questions, following facts rather than assumptions. And it's about the persistent, exhausting reality that Black people navigate daily. The knowledge that existing in public spaces can become criminal in someone else's eyes, that ordinary activities require vigilance and preparation, that carrying a phone with recording capability might be the difference between justice and tragedy. The parking lot at Maple Ridge Plaza looks the same as it did that September afternoon. People still park there, grab lunch, load groceries, go about their lives. But for Marcus, that space is permanently marked by what happened there. He still shops at the plaza occasionally, but he's always aware now, always watching, always ready to record if someone decides his presence is suspicious. The video remains online, a permanent record of what happened. 52 million views, hundreds of thousands of comments. A cultural reference point in ongoing discussions about racial bias, false accusations, and the importance of evidence in the pursuit of justice. Do you think justice was fully served in this case? Or should the consequences have been harsher? If you believe these stories matter, if you think people who weaponize 911 against innocent people should face serious consequences, hit that subscribe button. We're exposing how racism manifests in everyday moments and demanding accountability for those who use the police as weapons against people they don't think belong. We're fighting for a world where picking up lunch doesn't require preparing for confrontation. This isn't about one parking lot or one couple. It's about every person who's been presumed criminal and had to prove their innocence for existing while Black.
Sir, what are you doing here?
Waiting for my friend to go work out. Why?
We got a report about someone trying to force entry. Let me see your ID.
ID? For what?
You matched the call. That's enough for me.
Is it because I'm Black?
Exactly. You got it right, buddy.
This is a big mistake, and it will cost a lot.
She's been calling me non-stop on the way here. Do you even understand what you just did? The man in that car, that's the police chief's brother. Get him out of cuffs right freaking now!
Officer Ryan Kelton had been on the force for only 7 months. 7 months of half-learned policies, shaky judgment, and a training file filled with notes no department ever wants to admit they ignored. Impulsive under pressure, relies on instinct instead of procedure, prone to escalations. But Brookford police needed bodies on the street, not perfect cadets, so Kelton passed, barely. On June 4, 2024, his inexperience and assumptions collided with a man standing outside a gym on a sunny afternoon. A man simply waiting for a friend. A man doing absolutely nothing suspicious. Kelton approached with his hand hovering near his taser, then jumped straight to accusations, then to cuffs, and then to panic because he had no idea who he just arrested. Not until the supervisor arrived did the truth detonate the situation. The man in the back of that patrol car was the police chief's brother, and Kelton had just destroyed his entire career. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. Stories like these deserve to be seen, and your support helps bring the truth to light. Brookford, a suburban city of roughly 120,000 people in the upper Midwest. The kind of place where strip malls line the main roads, where chain gyms compete for memberships, where residential neighborhoods spread out in planned developments. Peak Fitness sat at the corner of Riverside Avenue and Oak Street, a mid-tier gym with floor-to-ceiling windows, bright signage, and a parking lot that stayed busy from early morning until late evening. It was 4:23 p.m. on a Tuesday, the tail end of the lunch rush workout crowd and the beginning of the after-work surge. The weather was perfect, 73 degrees, clear skies, gentle breeze. People moved in and out of the gym in workout clothes, carrying water bottles and gym bags, following their routines without incident. Marcus Whitfield, 38 years old, stood near the entrance, waiting for his friend David to arrive. They had a standing Tuesday workout appointment, had been training together for over a year. David was running 15 minutes late, stuck in traffic, texting Marcus updates every few minutes. Marcus wore athletic shorts, a gray t-shirt, and sneakers. His gym bag sat at his feet, containing his workout gear, a change of clothes, his water bottle, and his phone charger.
He wasn't pacing, wasn't looking in windows, wasn't trying doors, just standing, occasionally checking his phone, waiting. Marcus Whitfield was the younger brother of Police Chief Anthony Whitfield, who'd run the Brookford Police Department for the past 6 years. Marcus worked as a financial analyst for a consulting firm downtown, lived in the house 3 miles from the gym, and had been a member of Peak Fitness for 18 months. His membership card was in his wallet. His photo was in the gym system. He had every right to be exactly where he was. But to Officer Ryan Kelton, who pulled into the parking lot on routine patrol, Marcus looked suspicious. Kelton was 24 years old, 7 months removed from the academy, and operating with the dangerous combination of impulsive decision-making under pressure, tends to escalate situations that could be resolved through communication, and a strong reliance on gut instinct rather than established procedure. But Brookford PD was understaffed. 3 senior officers had retired in the past year, 2 had transferred to better-paying departments. The city council had approved new hiring, but the academy pipeline was slow. So, supervisors were clearing rookies for solo patrol faster than policy technically required, hoping experience would compensate for inadequate training. Kelton had been cleared after just 10 weeks of field training, 2 weeks short of the department standard. His supervising officer had signed off with reservations, but under pressure from command staff who needed patrol cars on the street. Kelton's Axon Bodycam activated as he exited his patrol car. The footage would later show exactly what happened, frame by frame, a complete record of how assumptions become violations. He walked across the parking lot toward Marcus with purpose, his hand already hovering near his taser holster, his posture communicating suspicion before a single word was spoken. "Sir, what are you doing here?"
Marcus turned, his expression shifting from neutral to confused. The question seemed absurd given the context, standing outside a gym at 4:23 p.m., waiting for my friend to go work out. Why? Kelton's eyes scanned Marcus from head to toe, lingering on details that meant nothing. The gym bag, the athletic clothing, the fact that he was black. "We got a report about someone trying to force entry. Let me see your ID." Marcus's confusion deepened into frustration. "ID? For what? I'm a member here. I'm waiting for my workout partner." "You matched the call. That's enough for me." This was Kelton's first major error, though far from his last. There had been no call about forced entry, no dispatch report, no description of a suspect. Kelton had simply driven past, seen a black man standing near a building, and his inadequately trained instincts had told him that warranted investigation. When Marcus questioned him, he had fabricated a justification rather than admit he had no legitimate reason for the stop. "I don't match anything," Marcus said, his voice rising slightly. "I'm standing outside a gym I belong to, waiting for a friend. That's not a crime." Kelton stepped closer, his hand moving from hovering near his taser to actually touching the handle. "Sir, I'm going to need you to comply. Put your hands behind your back." "For what? I haven't done anything!" Before Marcus could say another word, Kelton grabbed his wrist and forced his hands behind his back. The handcuffs clicked into place with unnecessary force. Marcus's jaw tightened, his breathing quickened, but he didn't resist physically. He knew how these situations could escalate. He knew the statistics on use of force. He stayed still but spoke clearly, his voice carrying across the parking lot. "This is a big mistake, and it will cost a lot." Gym members were starting to notice. Several stopped mid-conversation, watching the encounter unfold. Phones came out, cameras activating. A woman in workout clothes called out, "What did he do? He was just standing there." Kelton ignored her, focused entirely on securing Marcus and getting him into the patrol car. He searched Marcus's gym bag, pulling out the water bottle, the workout clothes, the phone charger. Nothing suspicious, nothing illegal, nothing that could possibly justify the detention. But Kelton had committed to the stop and couldn't back down without admitting error. "You were attempting to gain unlawful entry," Kelton said, his voice carrying the defensive edge of someone who knows he's wrong but won't acknowledge it. "I said I'm waiting for someone. That's it. I'm a member here. My name is in your system. Call the gym manager. Check your dispatch records. Do anything except what you're doing right now." Kelton guided Marcus toward the patrol car. The body cam captured everything. Marcus's calm attempts at explaining,
Kelton's refusal to listen, the growing crowd of witnesses, the phones recording from multiple angles. And it captured Marcus's final statement before being placed in the back seat. "You have no idea what you just did." What would you have done if an officer detained you for simply waiting outside a building?
Sergeant Linda Morrison received the call 7 minutes after Kelton had initiated the stop. She was 3 blocks away, finishing paperwork from a traffic accident, when a radio crackled with Kelton's voice. "Show me one in custody at Peak Fitness, Riverside, and Oak." Morrison knew Kelton. She'd reviewed his training file when he was cleared for solo patrol and had disagreed with the decision. Too impulsive, too quick to escalate, not ready for independent decision-making. But she'd been overruled by command staff, who needed coverage more than caution. She also knew something Kelton apparently didn't. The police chief's brother was a member at Peak Fitness and worked out there regularly. And when her phone started ringing, first the desk sergeant, then the captain, then the police chief himself, she knew exactly what had happened before she arrived. She pulled into the parking lot at 4:31 p.m., 8 minutes after the initial contact. Her Bodycam captured the scene. Kelton standing beside his patrol car, Marcus sitting in the back seat, visible through the window, at least a dozen gym members watching and recording. Morrison approached quickly, her expression already shifting from neutral to concerned. "Kelton, why is this man in cuffs?" "Got a report about attempted forced entry. Subject matched the description. He was acting suspicious, refused to cooperate." "What report?" Morrison interrupted. "I've been monitoring dispatch. There's been no call about forced entry at this location." Kelton's confidence faltered. When I arrived, he was standing outside looking around. Seemed suspicious. I made contact to investigate." Morrison closed her eyes briefly, the weight of the situation settling over her. Her phone buzzed again. She looked at the screen. "Chief Whitfield." She answered with a single word. "Understood." She turned to Kelton, her voice dropping to barely controlled fury. "Chief's been calling me non-stop on the way here." She paused, letting the implication hang. "Do you even understand what you just did?" Kelton's face showed confusion. "I detained a suspicious individual. The man in that car is Police Chief Whitfield's brother." The color drained from Kelton's face. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Morrison watched him process the information, watched the realization hit, watched his entire posture collapse. Get him out of those cuffs, right now. Kelton fumbled with his keys, hand shaking. He opened the back door of the patrol car. Marcus stepped out slowly, deliberately, rubbing his wrists where the metal had pressed against skin. Morrison approached immediately. "Mr. Whitfield, I am so sorry. This should never have happened." Marcus looked at Kelton, then at Morrison. His voice was calm, but carried unmistakable anger. "I told him I was waiting for my friend. I told him I was a member here. I offered to provide proof. He didn't care. He fabricated a call about forced entry and arrested me for standing outside a gym." Morrison had no defense because there was no defense. "Sir, we'll be conducting a full investigation." "That was profiling, Sergeant. Plain and simple. Your officer saw a black man standing near a building and decided that was criminal behavior. It doesn't matter who my brother is. It matters that this happens, that it happened to me, that it would have happened regardless." By this point, at least 15 people were recording. Morrison could see the phones, could imagine the social media posts already spreading, could calculate the public relations catastrophe unfolding in real time. This wasn't just an unlawful detention. This was the police chief's brother, detained by one of the chief's own officers for doing nothing wrong in front of dozens of witnesses, with video evidence. Marcus pulled out his phone and called his brother. "Anthony, I was just arrested outside my gym by one of your officers for waiting. Yes, actually arrested, in handcuffs. I'm fine, but we need to talk."
Do you think the officer would have acted differently if he knew the man's identity? Or was this bound to happen anyway? Internal Affairs Investigation. By Wednesday morning, the incident had reached Captain James Rodriguez, head of Internal Affairs. The Bodycam footage was already on his desk, along with civilian video from 3 different angles, a formal complaint from Marcus Whitfield, and a media inquiry list that ran 2 pages long. Rodriguez had been with Brookford PD for 19 years. He'd investigated hundreds of misconduct cases, But this one carried unique complications. The victim was the chief's brother, the footage was already circulating on social media, and the violations were so clear that defending them would be impossible. He started with the dispatch records. As Marcus had stated, there had been no call about forced entry at Peak Fitness, no report of suspicious activity, no description of a suspect. Kelton had fabricated the entire justification for the stop. Rodriguez pulled the gym's security footage. It showed Marcus arriving at 4:19 p.m., standing near the entrance, checking his phone periodically, making no attempt to enter the building, exhibiting no behavior that could reasonably be considered suspicious. At 4:23 p.m., Kelton appeared on camera, approaching Marcus directly. The entire encounter, from first contact to handcuffs, took less than 4 minutes. Then Rodriguez pulled Kelton's training file. The warnings were extensive and damning. Officer Kelton demonstrates impulsive decision-making, particularly in situations involving perceived non-compliance. Recommend additional scenario-based training on de-escalation. Noted pattern of escalating routine encounters into confrontations. Needs coaching on when not to initiate contact. Concerns about Officer Kelton's ability to distinguish between unusual behavior and criminal activity. Frequently interprets neutral actions as suspicious. Field training evaluation. Officer Kelton shows enthusiasm but lacks judgment necessary for solo patrol. Recommend minimum 4 additional weeks of supervised field work before clearance. The final recommendation had been overwritten by a command staff memo. Due to operational necessity and current staffing levels, Officer Kelton is cleared for solo patrol effective immediately. Supervisors should monitor his performance closely during initial months. That close monitoring had never happened. Kelton had been patrolling alone for 7 months, making decisions without oversight, operating on instinct and bias rather than training and procedure. Rodriguez conducted the formal interview with Kelton on Wednesday afternoon. The conversation was recorded per department policy, every word documented for the investigations that would follow, internal, civilian oversight, and likely federal. Officer Kelton, you stated in your report that you responded to a call about forced entry at Peak Fitness. Dispatch records show no such call. Explain the discrepancy. Kelton shifted in his chair, his attorney beside him taking notes. I may have been mistaken about the specific call. When I arrived, the subject's behavior seemed suspicious. What specific behavior? Rodriguez interrupted. The security footage shows Marcus standing still, checking his phone periodically. What about that behavior suggested criminal activity? He was loitering. Waiting for a friend to arrive is not loitering. It's not suspicious. It's not illegal. You had no reasonable suspicion to initiate contact, yet you stopped him, demanded ID, fabricated a justification, and arrested him. Walk me through your actual decision-making process. Silence. Kelton's attorney advised him not to answer. Rodriguez leaned forward. Let me tell you what the evidence shows. You saw a black man standing outside a building without any articulatable reasonable suspicion, without any reported criminal activity, without any legitimate law enforcement purpose. You decided he needed to be questioned. When he exercised his right to ask why, you became defensive. When he didn't immediately comply with your unlawful demand, you arrested him. That's not policing. That's racial profiling. The interview continued for another 40 minutes. Kelton had no credible explanations. His attorney tried to argue that his training was inadequate, that the department should share responsibility for clearing him before he was ready. The argument wasn't wrong, but it didn't absolve Kelton of personal responsibility for his actions. Rodriguez's preliminary report recommended immediate termination and forwarded the case to the city attorney for evaluation of civil liability.
The video footage exploded across social media Tuesday evening. By Wednesday morning, it had been viewed over 5 million times across various platforms. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive of Marcus and critical of Kelton. He was literally just standing there, nothing suspicious at all. If this can happen to the police chief's brother, imagine what happened to everyone else. Officer needs to be fired and charged. This is exactly what we mean by racial profiling. Local news stations picked up the story by noon. Every broadcast led with the same angle. Police chief's brother arrested by department officer. The optics were devastating.
If the chief's own brother could be profiled and unlawfully detained, it exposed how pervasive the problem was. Police Chief Anthony Whitfield held a press conference Wednesday afternoon. He stood at a podium in full uniform, his expression grave, flanked by the city manager and the president of the Civilian Police Oversight Board. Yesterday afternoon, my brother Marcus was unlawfully detained by one of our officers. I want to be absolutely clear. Family relationship does not make this worse or better. The violation is the same whether the victim is my brother or any other citizen. What happened to Marcus happens to black men every day in this country. The difference is that my position gives this incident visibility and demands accountability. He paused, his voice taking on weight. I have recused myself from the internal investigation to avoid any appearance of bias, but I will not be silent about what this represents. Officer Kelton stopped my brother without cause, fabricated a justification, and arrested him for existing while black. That is unacceptable, and it reveals systemic failures in our training and supervision that I am committed to addressing. The statement was carefully worded, threading the difficult line between family loyalty and professional responsibility, but it was also genuine. Chief Whitfield had spent his career trying to reform police culture, implementing bias training and accountability measures. His own brother's arrest made the stakes personal. Marcus gave his own statement that evening, standing outside the gym where he'd been arrested less than 24 hours earlier. I wasn't targeted because I'm the police chief's brother. I was targeted because of how I look. My brother didn't protect me from this. His position just made it visible. But for every person who sees this video and is outraged, remember that this happens every day to people who don't have cameras, don't have platforms, don't have family members in positions of authority. That's why accountability matters, not just for me, but for everyone.
Marcus Whitfield retained Jennifer Chen from the Northern Civil Rights Legal Foundation. Chen had built her career on police misconduct cases and saw immediately that this one was both personally compelling and legally airtight. The federal lawsuit, filed in U.S. District Court 3 weeks after the incident, was comprehensive and devastating. The complaint ran 63 pages and detailed not just Kelton's actions, but the systemic failures that enabled them. Count 1, Fourth Amendment violation, unlawful stop and detention. Officer Kelton initiated contact without reasonable suspicion, detained Marcus without legal justification, and arrested him without probable cause. Count 2, Fourth Amendment violation, false arrest. Marcus was unlawfully restrained and placed in custody despite engaging in entirely lawful conduct. Count 3, 14th Amendment violation, racial profiling. The stop was motivated by racial bias, as evidenced by the lack of any legitimate law enforcement purpose and the fabricated justification. Count 4, fabrication of evidence. Kelton's claim about a forced entry call constituted fabrication of evidence to justify an unlawful stop. Count 5, emotional distress. The humiliation of being handcuffed in public, treated as a criminal, and subjected to racial profiling caused significant emotional harm. Count 6, municipal liability. The city of Brookford failed to adequately train its officers, ignored documented concerns about Kelton's judgment, cleared him for solo patrol despite recommendations for extended training, and failed to provide adequate supervision. The lawsuit sought $10 million in damages plus comprehensive policy reforms. The city's legal team reviewed the evidence and quickly realized they had no viable defense. The Bodycam footage was indefensible. The security camera video corroborated Marcus's account completely. Kelton's fabrication about the forced entry call was documented. His training file proved the department had ignored clear warning signs. Settlement negotiations began within 6 weeks. The city wanted to resolve the case quickly before discovery revealed additional problematic patterns in the department's training and hiring practices. Marcus's attorneys had leverage.
The video had been viewed millions of times, public support was overwhelming, and a jury verdict could easily exceed what the city was willing to pay in settlement. 8 months after the gym parking lot arrest, the settlement was finalized. The terms were made public per Marcus's insistence that transparency was essential to accountability.
$8.5 million total settlement, $6 million compensatory damages to Marcus Whitfield, $2.5 million punitive damages, one of the largest settlements in department history. Officer Ryan Kelton terminated. Immediate termination for gross misconduct, fabrication of evidence, and civil rights violations. Post-certification permanently revoked by State Board. Name entered into National Decertification Index. Barred from any future law enforcement employment. No union defense. The police union declined to defend Kelton, citing clear and documented procedural violations that make defense untenable. Comprehensive policy reforms. All rookies required to complete minimum 16 weeks of field training with no exceptions for staffing needs. Supervisor approval required for any detention initiated by officers with less than 2 years' experience. Mandatory bias recognition training every 90 days for all officers. Early warning system implemented to track patterns of stops, particularly racial disparities. Civilian Oversight Board granted expanded authority to review Bodycam footage and recommend discipline. Review of all detentions and arrests made by Officer Kelton during his 7 months of solo patrol. 14 cases identified for re-examination. Public acknowledgement. The city issued a formal apology acknowledging that Marcus Whitfield was unlawfully detained and that Officer Kelton's conduct violated constitutional rights and department policy. Do you think financial settlements actually fix anything? Or does deeper reform need to happen?
Officer Ryan Kelton left law enforcement at age 25. His career, barely 7 months old, ended with a termination for cause that would follow him permanently. The decertification meant he couldn't be hired by another police department anywhere in the country. The National Decertification Index entry meant that any employer running a background check would immediately see that he'd been fired for civil rights violations. He found work briefly in private security, but was terminated within 3 months when clients discovered his history. The video of him arresting Marcus Whitfield, viewed millions of times, made him permanently unemployable in any field involving public trust or authority. He issued no public statement beyond a brief apology through his attorney. I made serious errors in judgment that I deeply regret. I accept responsibility for my actions. Marcus Whitfield used a portion of the settlement to establish a scholarship fund for students pursuing careers in civil rights law and criminal justice reform. He also became an advocate, speaking at police training sessions across the state, sharing his experience with rooms full of new officers. When Officer Kelton stopped me, I was doing nothing wrong. Nothing suspicious, nothing illegal. I was waiting for a friend outside a gym I'd been a member of for over a year. But he looked at me and saw a threat. That's what unchecked bias does. It turns innocent people into suspects, turns routine moments into confrontations, turns your careers into cautionary tales. The Brookford Police Department implemented all mandated reforms. The extended field training reduced misconduct complaints by 47% in the first year. The supervisor approval requirement for rookie-initiated detentions prevented several potentially problematic stops. The bias training, combined with regular testing and scenario-based evaluation, helped officers recognize and challenge their assumptions. Chief Whitfield used the incident as a catalyst for broader reforms. He partnered with community organizations, established regular public forums for accountability discussions, and made Bodycam footage more accessible through a public portal. The department became a model studied by other agencies trying to implement meaningful change. But the most profound impact was personal. Marcus Whitfield continued his workouts at peak fitness, refused to be driven away from his routine by one officer's prejudice. But he was changed. He noticed patrol cars differently now, felt tension when officers were nearby, carried the memory of being handcuffed for existing in public space. 2 years after the incident, he reflected in an interview. The settlement was about accountability. The reforms were about preventing it from happening again, but neither can restore what was taken. The fundamental sense of safety that comes from knowing you can exist in public spaces without being criminalized. My brother runs the police department. I won $8.5 million, and I still feel vulnerable when I see a police car. That's the real cost, not the money the city paid, but the trust that was broken and can't be fully repaired. The body cam footage from that June afternoon remains a training tool, shown to new officers as an example of how assumptions destroy careers and violate rights. Ryan Kelton's 7-month law enforcement career serves as a warning about what happens when departments prioritize staffing over training, when warning signs are ignored, when bias is allowed to operate as instinct. And Marcus Whitfield's experience serves as a reminder that no credentials, no family connections, no amount of legitimacy can fully protect black men from being presumed criminal. That accountability and reform, while necessary, can't erase the daily reality of moving through a world where your presence is seen as suspicious, where waiting for a friend requires being prepared to prove you belong. If you believe these stories matter, if you think officers who profile should lose their badges permanently, hit that subscribe button. We're exposing how inadequate training and unchecked bias create constitutional violations. We're demanding accountability for officers who target people based on appearance. We're fighting for a system where waiting outside a gym doesn't require defending your right to exist. This isn't about one rookie or one victim. It's about every person who's been stopped without cause and forced to prove they're not a threat.
Sir, stop right there for me.
What's going on, officer?
We got a call about suspicious behavior.
Suspicious? So why me?
You fit the description we were given. Until we sort it out, you have the right to remain silent.
I'm not resisting, but you're making a mistake.
State chief's been calling me non-stop on the way over. Do you even know what y'all did? That man in the car? That's State Senator Malik J. Thomas. Get him out of cuffs. Now!
Officer Darren McCall had been with the Brookline City Police Department for just under a year. 12 months of half-completed training modules, 3 documented concerns about impulse control, and a reputation for stopping anyone who didn't fit his idea of belonging. His supervisors called him motivated, his fellow rookies called him reckless, but the department, short-staffed and overwhelmed, just called him available. On May 9th, 2024, that availability collided with a man walking toward a grocery store on a sunny afternoon. A man who wasn't acting suspicious, wasn't breaking any laws, wasn't even speaking, just existing in the wrong place in the wrong officer's imagination. A stop based on nothing more than bias turned into a detention, then an arrest, then a full-blown scandal the department desperately tried to contain. What McCall didn't know, not until it was far too late, was who that man actually was. A sitting state senator. And this one mistake would end his career and cost the city $3.5 million. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. Brookline City, a mid-size urban center in the Midwest with tree-lined streets, well-maintained public spaces, and a growing professional class. The Riverside shopping classes sat on the west side, a busy commercial hub with a grocery store, pharmacy, coffee shop, and ample parking. Thursday afternoon traffic was steady. Cars pulling in and out, shopping carts rattling across the pavement, people moving through their weekly routines without incident. At 2:47 p.m., Malik Thomas, 39 years old, pulled into the parking lot driving his modest sedan. He was dressed casually, dark jeans, a gray Henley shirt, sneakers. He just finished a constituent meeting and needed to pick up groceries before heading home. He parked in the third row, grabbed his reusable shopping bags from the back seat, and started walking toward the store entrance. Malik Thomas was a state senator, elected 3 years earlier representing District 14, which included parts of Brookline City and 2 surrounding suburbs. He'd built his career on education reform and criminal justice oversight. He served on the Senate Judiciary Committee. His face had been in local newspapers, on campaign mailers, at community town halls. He was a public figure in his district, though not universally recognizable across the state. Officer Darren McCall was parked at the edge of the lot, ostensibly monitoring traffic, but mostly scrolling through his patrol computer.
At 26 years old, with 12 months on the force, McCall operated with a mindset shaped more by assumptions than experience. He'd been cleared for solo patrol after minimal field training, despite documented concerns about his judgment, his tendency to escalate, his pattern of stops that seemed to target black men disproportionately. McCall looked up from his computer and saw Malik Thomas walking across the parking lot. Nothing about Thomas's behavior suggested criminal activity. He wasn't running, wasn't looking around nervously, wasn't approaching cars or acting strangely, just walking toward a grocery store with shopping bags in hand. But McCall's pattern recognition system, built on unchecked bias rather than evidence-based policing, flagged Thomas as worth investigating. McCall exited his patrol car, his Axon Bodycam activating automatically. He walked quickly across the parking lot, closing the distance between them. "Sir, stop right there for me." Thomas turned, confusion crossing his face. "What's going on, officer?" "We got a call about suspicious behavior in this area." This was a lie. No call had come through dispatch, no report of criminal activity. McCall had simply decided that Thomas's presence warranted investigation. Thomas's expression shifted from confusion to frustration. Suspicious? So why me? McCall stepped closer, his eyes scanning Thomas from head to toe, looking for justification that didn't exist. "We fit the description we were given. Until we sort it out, you have the right to remain silent." The absurdity of the statement hung in the air. What description? Of what crime? Thomas shook his head, not aggressively, but with clear incredulity. "Look, whatever you think I'm doing, you're wrong. Sir, you're being detained." Thomas felt the familiar weight of being black in America, of having to prove innocence for the crime of existing. But he also knew his rights, knew police procedure, knew exactly what was happening. "I'm not resisting, but you're making a mistake." McCall reached for his handcuffs. Other shoppers were starting to notice, slowing down, watching the encounter unfold. A woman pulled out her phone and began recording. McCall either didn't notice or didn't care. He grabbed Thomas's wrist and forced his hands behind his back, the handcuffs clicking into place with unnecessary force. Thomas's voice remained calm but carried an edge of warning. "This is a mistake. You need to check who I am before this goes further."
6 minutes after the initial stop, a second patrol car pulled into the parking lot fast, tires squealing slightly. Sergeant Rita Hernandez emerged, moving quickly toward McCall's vehicle where Thomas sat handcuffed in the back seat. Her phone had been ringing non-stop for the past 4 minutes. The police chief, the department's public information officer, someone from the city manager's office, all asking the same question. Why was one of their officers arresting State Senator Malik Thomas in a grocery store parking lot? Hernandez approached McCall with barely controlled fury. "Chief's been calling me non-stop on the way over." McCall's confidence faltered slightly. Suspicious male matched the description from, "Do you even know what you did?" Hernandez's voice cut through his excuse. "That man in your car, that's State Senator Malik J. Thomas." The color drained from McCall's face. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. "What?" "Get him out of those cuffs, now!" McCall fumbled with his keys, hands shaking as he opened the patrol car door. Thomas stepped out, rubbing his wrists where the metal had pressed against skin. Hernandez approached immediately, her voice a mixture of professionalism and genuine regret. "Senator Thomas, I deeply apologize. This should not have happened." Thomas looked at McCall, then at Hernandez. His voice was quiet but carried the weight of controlled anger. "I told him, several times. He didn't listen. Sir, we'll be conducting a full investigation. This wasn't confusion, Sergeant. This was profiling. I was walking to a grocery store. That's what I was doing, and your officer decided that was suspicious enough to detain and handcuff me in front of dozens of witnesses." Hernandez had no defense, because there was no defense. She could see the phones recording, could imagine the social media posts already going live, could calculate the public relations disaster unfolding in real time. Thomas pulled out his phone and made a call. "David, I need you to meet me at home. I was just arrested in a grocery store parking lot by Brookline PD. Yes, arrested. For walking while black, apparently." The woman who'd been recording the entire encounter approached. Senator Thomas, I got everything on video. I'm posting it now. People need to see this. Thomas nodded. Thank you. Make sure it's clear I wasn't doing anything wrong. Just walking. That's all it takes, apparently. What would you have done if you were in this man's position and knew the officer had zero real reason to stop you?
By 5 p.m., less than 90 minutes after the incident, the video had exploded across social media. The woman's TikTok post had 3 million views. Twitter was trending hashtag BrooklinePD and hashtag Senator Thomas. News outlets were calling the police department for comment. The footage was crystal clear. A man walking peacefully across a parking lot, an officer approaching without cause, the detention, the handcuffs, the supervising sergeant's panicked arrival. Comments flooded in. He was literally just walking, nothing suspicious at all. If they'll do this to a state senator, imagine what they do to regular people. Officer needs to be fired immediately. How many other people has this cop profiled? The Brookline Police Department's public information officer released a brief statement. We are aware of an incident involving one of our officers and State Senator Thomas. The matter is under investigation. We take all complaints seriously. The statement satisfied no one. Local civil rights organizations issued immediate responses demanding transparency, accountability, and Officer McCall's termination. The state NAACP chapter called for a federal investigation into the department's practices. Other state legislators, both Democrat and Republican, issued statements supporting Senator Thomas. By that evening, Senator Thomas held a brief press availability outside his home. Cameras from 5 local news stations captured his statement. This afternoon, I was walking toward a grocery store to buy food for my family. I was detained, handcuffed, and placed in a patrol car by Officer Darren McCall of the Brookline Police Department. When I asked what I'd done, he said I matched a description of suspicious activity. There was no description. There was no suspicious activity. There was just a black man in a parking lot, and apparently that was enough. He paused, his voice steady but heavy. I wasn't targeted because I'm a senator. I was targeted because I'm a black man. That's what makes this matter, not my position, but the pattern. Officer McCall didn't know who I was when he stopped me. He just knew what I looked like, and that was sufficient grounds for detention in his mind. Do you think the officer would have acted differently if he knew who the man was, or was this always going to happen?
By Friday morning, Captain James Rodriguez of Internal Affairs had assembled a complete file on Officer Darren McCall. The Bodycam footage was damning enough on its own, but the pattern that emerged from deeper investigation was even worse. Rodriguez pulled McCall's stop records from his 12 months on the force. The data was stark. 47 total stops for suspicious behavior. 38 of those stops involved black individuals, 81%. Brookline's population was 23% black. 0 arrests resulted from any of these stops. Multiple complaints filed by citizens who felt racially profiled. Not a single stop had resulted in discovery of criminal activity. Rodriguez cross-referenced the stops with dispatch records. In 31 cases, there had been no dispatch call justifying the stop. McCall had initiated contact based solely on his own observations. The pattern was unmistakable. He was targeting black residents without cause, fishing for criminal activity that didn't exist, creating confrontations that served no legitimate law enforcement purpose. The training records were equally troubling. McCall's academy file included multiple warnings. Officer McCall demonstrates difficulty distinguishing between unusual behavior and criminal behavior. Noted tendency to act on assumptions rather than observed facts. Concerns about implicit bias. Recommend additional training before field deployment. His field training reports showed similar patterns. McCall needs coaching on when not to initiate contact. Several instances of stops without articulable reasonable suspicion. Recommend extended field training period to address judgment concerns. But extended training hadn't happened. Additional bias recognition courses hadn't been completed. The documented concerns had been filed and forgotten because the department needed officers on the street and McCall met the minimum qualifications on paper. Rodriguez interviewed the supervising sergeant who'd cleared McCall for solo patrol. The conversation was uncomfortable.
Did you review the concerns in his training file before signing off? I skimmed them. Nothing seemed serious enough to delay him. Multiple warnings about bias and poor judgment didn't seem serious? We were short-staffed. He passed the basic requirements. I thought field experience would help him improve. Instead, he spent 12 months profiling residents, and now we have a state senator filing a federal civil rights lawsuit. The sergeant had no response. At what point should departments start removing officers who show obvious patterns, even without violent incidents?
Senator Thomas retained David Chen from the Midwest Civil Rights Legal Foundation. Chen filed a comprehensive federal lawsuit in U.S. District Court 8 days after the incident. The complaint was methodical and devastating. Count 1, Fourth Amendment violation, unlawful stop and detention. Officer McCall stopped Senator Thomas without reasonable suspicion of criminal activity, detained him without legal justification, and arrested him without probable cause. Count 2, 14th Amendment violation, racial profiling. The stop was motivated by racial bias, as evidenced by Officer McCall's pattern of disproportionately stopping black individuals and his inability to articulate any legitimate law enforcement purpose. Count 3, false arrest. Senator Thomas was unlawfully restrained and placed in custody despite engaging in entirely lawful conduct. Count 4, emotional distress. The humiliation of being handcuffed in public, treated as a criminal while engaging in routine activity, and subjected to racial profiling caused significant emotional harm. Count 5, municipal liability. The city of Brookline failed to adequately train its officers, ignored documented concerns about Officer McCall's judgment and bias, and maintained policies that enabled discriminatory policing. The lawsuit sought $3.5 million in damages, termination of Officer McCall, and comprehensive policy reforms. The city's legal team reviewed the evidence and quickly advised settlement. The body cam footage was indefensible. McCall's stop pattern proved systemic targeting. The training records showed the department had ignored clear warning signs. Fighting the case would only generate more negative publicity and potentially result in a larger verdict. The city manager reached out to Senator Thomas's attorney within 3 weeks. Settlement negotiations began immediately. 8 months after the parking lot incident, the settlement was finalized. The terms were made public per Senator Thomas's insistence. $3.5 million settlement paid directly to Senator Thomas, with a portion donated to civil rights organizations working on police reform. Officer Darren McCall terminated, effective immediately, with cause listed as gross misconduct, pattern of discriminatory stops, and civil rights violations. Post-certification review. McCall's law enforcement certification was revoked by the State Peace Officers Standards and Training Board. State Misconduct Registry. McCall's name, photograph, and termination details were entered into the state's public database of officers terminated for cause. Public acknowledgement. The city issued a formal apology acknowledging that Senator Thomas was unlawfully detained and that Officer McCall's conduct violated constitutional rights.
Comprehensive policy reforms. All officers required to complete 16 weeks of field training with no exceptions. Quarterly bias recognition training with scenario-based testing. Early warning system tracking stop patterns and racial disparities. Civilian Oversight Board with authority to review stops and recommend discipline. Public disclosure of stop data by race and outcome. Officer McCall issued a brief statement through his attorney. I never intended harm. I made mistakes in judgment that I deeply regret. Senator Thomas responded at a press conference. Intent doesn't erase impact. Officer McCall may not have intended to profile me, but that's exactly what happened. And it happened because the system that trained him, supervised him, and cleared him for duty failed to address obvious problems. This settlement isn't just about me. It's about every person who gets stopped, questioned, detained, and humiliated for existing while black. Do you think monetary settlements actually change police behavior, or are deeper reforms needed? 18 months after the incident, Senator Thomas was re-elected with 67% of the vote. He'd used the experience as a platform for criminal justice reform, introducing legislation requiring statewide tracking of police stops by race, mandating bias training for all officers, and creating a database of terminated officers to prevent problematic officers from simply moving to different departments. Officer Darren McCall left law enforcement at age 27. The misconduct registry made it impossible to get hired by another department. He found work in private security, but was terminated within 6 months after his background became known to the company's clients. The parking lot stop, captured on multiple cameras and viewed millions of times, followed him everywhere. The Brookline Police Department implemented all required reforms. Stop data from the following year showed a 39% reduction in stops without clear reasonable suspicion, and a significant reduction in racial disparities. The early warning system identified 3 other officers with concerning stop patterns, leading to additional training and closer supervision. But the most lasting impact was the conversation the incident sparked. Senator Thomas's case became a reference point in discussions about racial profiling, implicit bias, and the need for accountability in policing. The Bodycam footage was used in police training sessions across the country as an example of how not to conduct a stop. 2 years later, Senator Thomas still shops at that same grocery store. He parks in the same lot, walks the same path to the entrance. But he's always aware now, always watching for patrol cars, always carrying the memory of being handcuffed for walking while black. The settlement brought accountability. The reforms brought change. But nothing can restore the fundamental sense of safety that was violated that Thursday afternoon when an officer decided that his presence in a parking lot was suspicious enough to justify detention. If you believe these stories matter, if you think officers who profile should lose their badges, hit that subscribe button. We're exposing how bias operates in routine encounters and demanding accountability for officers who target people based on appearance rather than evidence. We're fighting for a system where walking to a grocery store doesn't require proving you're not a criminal. This isn't about one officer or one senator. It's about every person who's been stopped without cause and forced to defend their right to exist in public spaces.